Hi, my name is Amanda Fields, your proud RCAW Executive Director, here today with me, Tran, a DOSH safety professional with Labor and Industries. He is passionate about empowering businesses to prioritize safety and is here this morning to help you develop your accident prevention programs and answer any of your safety and labor and industry related questions. I ask that you all put yourself on mute and turn your videos off. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or ask your question in the comment section, and we will address the question ASAP. Me, take it away.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. So here we're going to talk today about developing an accident prevention program. In the time that we have, I figured the best way to structure this is to kind of give you, as best I can, from a precursory perspective, an overall summary and main concepts in helping develop the accident prevention program based upon just the code that addresses the need to have one. To give you some background as to who I am, I've been with Labor and Industries for about 4 years, approaching now. The majority of that time, over 3.5 years of it was with compliance, and I recently transferred over to the consultation aspects of it. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of the differences between consultation and compliance, but basically, consultation is here to help employers develop safety programs to help keep the employees safe and to help employers voluntarily pretty much try to voluntarily become compliant. Compliance expects you to have all these things in place. So if you end up having a compliance inspection, you can potentially be on the hook for penalized citations from associated to serious hazards and things of that nature. Whereas consultation, we come out and see what you have and don't have, and then we help you and give you guidance in developing a safety program. And we don't cite, and there are no penalties associated to that. So that's one of the major ones. We'll get into some of that a little bit later. But let's just get started on the program here with the presentation. So basically, you have my information there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. That is my field number right there, and also that is my email with Labor and Industries. So to start off, basically, let's ask just a general question. How many people do you think get injured in the state of Washington from workplace job related injuries? And that's a surprising number, 100,000, approximately 100,000 people get injured every year working in the state of Washington. Now, these injuries can be various injuries. They're going to be calculated as above the first aid assistance level and can range from a couple of days off because of injuries, all the way from severities across the board to even death. We actually have an average of about 30 to 40 deaths every year in the state of Washington. Some of the more serious prior that are not as serious as the fatalities can even, we're talking about amputations. They can go from minor cuts to lacerations to amputations to disabling injuries. So it is very significant in the sense of, more importantly, we want to try to keep everybody safe, to go to their loved ones and just to keep people working. So why do we have an accident prevention program? First off, it's the law. The APP, the Accident Prevention Program, is the most commonly cited violation from the compliance perspective. And either for no APP at all, or the APP that does exist with an employer is not tailored to the business. And when it comes from a compliance perspective, if you have a related serious hazard and the APP is missing and or does not have tailored aspects, you can actually be cited another serious violation associated to the APP. So now you're looking at two serious violations. But more importantly, and most importantly, the APP is to establish a safety culture to reduce risk of injury to employees. And like I said, we have loved ones we want to come home to, and I think that's a lot of times employers forget that aspect of it, is that you can operate for a long period of time without an APP and just by sheer luck not have any injuries, but it just takes that one moment of not wearing harness, and you fall, and now you've got 5 years into your running your industry, your company, you have someone that's now seriously injured potentially. So we want to just make sure that we start you off right and help you establish that safety culture. What is the accident prevention program? It's basically a written action plan on how to provide a safe and healthy workplace. It provides a description to your employees as to their expectations from the employer as to how to do the job safely and to follow established safety policies and that the employer sets in place. It's a plan for providing appropriate training, and it's a guide basically for reducing injuries. And these are a myriad of ways to do that. You've got identifying and controlling safety hazards, a plan for handling emergencies. It's a tool that employers can use for new employee orientations. It's a guide for also needed personnel protective equipment, from what is required to be used and how to take care of personal equipment. It's basically a great resource for employees to, number one, understand the rules and requirements, and also in the back of their minds, subconsciously understand that their safety is important because you have provided safety documentation for them to read. And basically for roofing, there are two codes that provide guidance and requirements for the creation of the accident prevention program. It addresses specifically two industries, the fixed industry and the construction industry. And roofing falls under the category of construction. So the code that we're going to be talking about today is 296.155.110. That's a great reference. You can look that up and search that. I'm basically going to be going through that element today. My objective today is to discuss the required elements of an accident prevention program, to help evaluate some of the regular and predictable hazards that might be needed to be addressed in your accident prevention program, and also determine what topics and materials to include in the program that gives it a little bit more concise and a little bit more meat bones to the safety aspects and topics discussed in it. And at the end, we'll explore some additional information and resources available to you if you need some additional assistance in creating the accident prevention program. That's what consultation does. And so we want to make sure I give you some information as to if you need some additional help, we can be made available to help you with that process. So here's the code. The essential aspect of the code that talks about what is required is that you basically have to develop a formal accident prevention program that's tailored to the needs of the particular plant or operation and to the type of hazards involved in that operation. So, and the aspect of that, and we've kind of talked about it before, you've got minimum requirements that is required. And then I've highlighted here tailored aspects. And the tailored is really the deep dive into the meat and bones of what your company does as far as addressing the hazards that have been recognized for what roofing does, and the type of exposures that employees, as far as to the kinds of hazards, and then the ways to keep employees safe from those hazards, mitigations, PPEs, and other equipment and other policies that are part of the accident program, and it makes it more comprehensive and complete. So these are just the minimum requirements that's listed in that code. You're required to have a safety orientation. You're required to show to employees how to report injuries in writing, how to report unsafe conditions, how to use personal protective equipment, how to take care of it, so on and so forth, how to respond to emergencies during the course of doing work, and what chemicals and or materials may be used on the job, and basically an overall description of your safety program. Additional requirements, and this is particular with the construction aspects, which is where the roofing falls under, is that you're required to have crew leader safety meetings at the beginning of each job and then at least weekly thereafter. And I realize with roofing, sometimes the jobs are done in a couple of days. And that's basically designed to, you've got to have at least an initial beginning of the job safety meetings. And then for some jobs that may last longer, you want to make sure that you're conducting these safety meetings at least once weekly. And then the meetings need to be tailored to that particular site. So an example associated to that is that, well, you might be going to a job site that is a residential roofing uh, work versus you might be going to a roofing job that is at a construction site. So there are different hazards, potential hazards exposed to that. So you want to make sure that your you as management is doing your walk around safety inspections uh, and informing the employees of the hazards specific to that site and the operation. You must address that the review of your walk around safety inspections. You must address any unsafe acts or conditions that may have resulted from an injury investigation that your company conducted where a root cause analysis was performed. And that information is important for your employees to receive so that they can avoid the potential similar kinds of injuries resulting from a similar situation that result in that injury. And then also, if you're doing walk around safety inspections and you're seeing unsafe acts, definitely is something that you want to make sure that you inform your employees of during these meetings. And it's important that you document the subjects that you discuss, and also who attended these meetings. And because from a compliance perspective, when it comes to training, it comes to job orientation and things of that nature, if it's not documented that it's been performed, LNI views it as it wasn't done. So very important to document your safety meetings. And all of your safety meetings, your company is required to keep it for 1 year and be made available for review by any LNI personnel that asks for it. So I've been known to in my compliance inspections to ask for 6 months worth of uh, safety meetings. And if you're doing those weekly, that's a lot. So make sure you have those ready on hand and keep them at least for 1 year. Okay. In regards to walk around safety inspections of your sites, it is required that you have one conducted at the beginning of each job and then weekly thereafter if the job lasts longer than a week. And it is highly recommended that you do them randomly as far as the days and times if you're doing them on a weekly basis for extended jobs. And then once again, with walk around safety inspections, you want to make it available to department personnel until the end of the job. And the walk around safety inspections, unlike the minutes for safety meetings, you only need to keep the walk around safety inspections through the conclusion of that particular job. So basically, so you could be on your third day and last day of a residential roofing job, and as a compliance inspector might come in and maybe they got a report or they see something, they will be asking for walk around safety inspections as well as the safety meetings. Any questions so far?
Not yet.
All right. So I shall proceed to stepping into developing an APP. And this is where we kind of start talking about some of the tailored aspects and what's important. Because the minimum requirements, even with the templates that we have available for you, if you want to start creating an APP, they're there, but they can't encompass and guess what sort of hazards your particular employees may experience and or the safety topics that need to be discussed. So here's where I start showing you or talking about some of the basic concepts of approaching how to work through and looking at tailored aspects of the hazards of roofing work. Steps to developing an APP. The first aspect is, well, what is a hazard? On an anecdotal perspective, a hazard is anything that's going to cause an injury, right? But on the textbook answer is this: basically any condition, potential, or inherent which can cause injury, death, or occupational disease. And for the roofing industry, uh, when when WSHA breaks down categories of hazards, there are four that I'm going to try to isolate here for you to kind of help focus on that. And the first of which is housekeeping hazard. So these are basically if hazards that can cause trip hazards. So if an employee trips over, they have to navigate through a work area that's got wood, uh, boxes, and tools everywhere. There's not a clear pathway. That presents a trip hazard, and people tripping, even from walking, can break limbs and cause even serious injuries. So um, that's what basic housekeeping is, right? Also, slippery floors and surfaces, and overhead items that could fall and hit someone from a higher level, which is exposes employees to crush hazards, and then and or just conditions that limit visibility due to clutter or equipment. So and or overall, as stated above, things that block access to walkways. The next category of a hazard is the mechanical aspect. We were talking about machineries or tools that don't have guarding or blades and can present lacerations, uh, cut hazards, and even potential, that can result in injuries such as amputations and things of that nature. And the majority of the roofing, tools I'm talking about in the situation that I've seen is like circular saws or table saws that have been brought onto site. That's an example of mechanical hazard. Other mechanical hazards, electrical. So the power cords that run these machineries, these tools, if they've uh, if they've worn out, the insulation has been exposed, and now potential copper wiring is being exposed. That presents an actual shock hazard or even an electrical burn hazard to employees if they actually touch the those copper wiring. And then you also have flying projectiles and flying particles and materials. Typical what I've seen on site is circular saws, people using circular saws without eye protection. Now they're exposing from the particles from the circular saw or nail guns that could result in fly into their eyes, things of that nature. So those are examples of mechanical. The another one is environmental, weather conditions, basically heat stress. It used to be that the heat stress requirements was just seasonal, and I believe the season was July and September, that it was required that employers have heat stress training, but that rule has been changed. And basically at this point in time, the heat stress training is required all year round. It's required all year round. So you want to make sure you include heat stress training in your accident prevention program. And then last but not least, you have positional hazards where people are working up high on ladders, roofs, and lifts as from doing the work. And of course, that is a fall hazard, exposes them to fall hazards. You also have stacked or shelved items that can fall and tip over, which presents crush hazards. And then you also have traffic or other danger zones where if you're on a construction site, you're doing roofing work on a construction site, where the employees, even though they don't use these these PITs, they could be exposed to the hazards because of the other operations that's going on in a construction site. And I'm talking about forklifts, loaders, cars, and things of that nature. So these are all struck by hazards that are part of the positional category. So now that you're aware of hazards, and I'm sure anecdotally you doing the job, you're aware of the hazards. And the list I provided was not comprehensive. but it's just some examples. Let's start talking about some of the steps in developing an APP. So you evaluate the hazards, and the expectation here is that when you evaluate hazards and looking at all the potential hazards in the work that you do, the expectation is it's just what's regular and predictable. You're not expected to be able to imagine out or think about every single possible hazard. We're talking about what's regular and is predictable in your workplace, right? And we've discussed some of those hazards in the above slides. So you evaluate those hazards. You consider methods for protecting the employees from those hazards. An example with fall protection. Well, what methods can you do with roofing work with fall protection? You can use a monitor system, guardrails, and harness. That's an example of methods for protecting employees. Personal protective equipment. Select personal protective equipment um, to help mitigate potential injury from flying. An example would be flying particles hazards. Uh, and then you have to apply training that is needed that can help alleviate and reduce the risk of injury from exposure to those hazards. One of the examples that I think of here is fall protection. There's an actual code that requires, and this code is separate from the actual accident prevention program coding, that requires that any employee that is exposed to fall hazards must have fall protection training. And it's also, of course, important that you document such training. So these are some of the examples that you start thinking about when you're kind of starting to develop into and including verbiage in your APP. I would highly recommend that you consider these specific issues to address these for your roofing work. Fall protection, housekeeping, lifting, the power tools, and heat stress. Those are definitely categories you want to, at minimum, consider. You might have some outliers unique to your business. Make sure you include those as well. So now that you've identified the hazards, you use and determined what you need to do as far as training, protecting methods, PPE, you use that content to start building your program outside of just the minimal aspects. So you'll include the minimal requirements in your APP, and then now you start including these tailored aspects of your hazards and the mitigation and the safety related content associated to that. An example would be, let's say want you want to mitigate fall protection by having your employees use a harness. And an example, what you would then include is now that you evaluate the fall protection hazard, now that you've identified what you can do to protect your employees. So you would now include verbiage in the APP that says, for example, harness, right? A section about harnesses, how to take care of it, how to make sure that check for the integrity of the harness, how to tie off properly, and things of that nature. And then you might want to even include training. If you can train yourself and make sure that it's a good thorough training on the aspect of covering all the safety points with it. Or you can use third-party trainers too. And of course, document that aspect. So you'll include all of those topics inside just one segment for just fall protection and any other equipment associated to that. How to install anchors, for example, make sure that there's a section about checking for integrity of anchors, how to properly install them, things of that nature. So now you're really digging into the meat of what the tailored aspects of your industry is. And then from all of that, you'll create an outline of your overall program. you add sections describing the different topics, sort of like how I've gave an example just now. And you put together a checklist for your orientation and or your training aspects of that. I would highly recommend that, even though I know with the industry, a lot of employers are hiring employees that have experience. I would recommend from a consultative perspective is that you, when you part of your orientation is you evaluate who what they say that they can do, because anybody can um, put certain things on a resume, but just from an employer perspective and doing diligence to keep the employees safe, um, I would evaluate, okay, tell me about the harness. How do you check for the harness integrity? How do you tie it off? I would evaluate how to use circular saws. I would evaluate on how they're taking care of their PPEs, and things of that nature, and as an initial part of your orientation. So then that way, if there's anything lacking in the knowledge from the employee, you can address that in your orientation and or training. Here is an example, and this page is actually taken from the sample we have available for the construction APP. It's from our template, and here you can see here that they've evaluated that, hey, here's how we're going to address safety with the use of ladders. There's general rules with checking the integrity. There are general rules with ascending and descending. There are general safety rules with one person being used at a time, so on and so forth. And they also talk about using A-frame ladders, not using the top cap, for example. And they also talk about using extension ladders. Here they've addressed how to properly secure it at the top point, at the roof, and then also even securing it with the feet that may be included, or to secure it using just mechanical installation of wood backings. So the cleats, as the saying goes. So these are just some examples of how you'd want to sort of structure the use of ladders, which is obviously something that is highly used in the roofing industry. Another thing I would recommend you include is a disciplinary policy in your APP. Highly recommended. And here's the reason why. As a compliance officer or a compliance inspector, oftentimes when I'm inspecting roofers, uh, I would ask, hey, what happens when one of your employees doesn't have eye protection on? What sort of things do you as the foreman or the supervisor do to alleviate or to address the safety hazard? And and the answer generally was like verbal, verbal, verbal. And I said, well, how many verbals do you give them? I have them put it on. So and then I'll ask, well, are you documenting these disciplinary actions? And I will actually ask, well, send me all the disciplinary actions you've taken with your employees. More often than not, there are no disciplinary actions. And so, and like I said before with L&I, if you are not documenting such actions, then then it hasn't happened. And so if you as an employer are practicing, the foreman is not conducting these kinds of disciplinary actions, what that does, it tells the employee is that, oh, they'll just give me a warning, right? From the mindset of the employee. And there aren't necessarily mentally any consequences for that, right? Are they being sent home without pay because they're violating safety aspects of it? And basically, if there isn't a disciplinary policy, there's first have the policy. The second aspect is that enforce it. Um, and if you're not enforcing it, then what happens then is that the safety culture is affected in a manner that the employees, they have this mindset that, well, it, it's they can get away with doing certain things. So that's the kind of culture that kind of gets a complacency asset approach towards safety. Versus if an employer is, oh man, so and so, my coworker got sent home yesterday without pay because it was the second time he didn't have or the first time, then now in their mindset, okay, this is important to them. So it now becomes important to the employee. Another aspect of the accident prevention program I would highly recommend is that you make sure, especially in construction, it is required about first aid training certification. If you have a crew of two or more on one work site, uh, and one of those people must be CPR first aid certified. And whether it's a supervisor and or if it's a lead, with two people on site, one of those at minimum must be CPR first aid certified. So these are kind of important aspects of the APP that compliance looks for, among other things. But these are bullet point, low bearing fruit sorts of whack codes that you want to make sure you include uh, in your APP. So you've heard me mention about the sample. So if you want to see an idea of what a construction APP looks like, do a search on LNI sample APP construction. You click on the LNI link there, and you scroll down and find a construction sample in English. I think we also have it in Spanish as well, and you click on that, and it'll show up a template that you can actually use to start developing your program. And they're just templates. They're not all inclusive. In particular, they're not designed to be inclusive for every industry. They give the minimal requirements, and then you actually have to do some legwork and do the hazard analysis and all the concepts we've talked about today to start filling in the tailored aspects of your work, of your of the roofing industry. So, um, and I've been as a compliance inspector come in and when I ask for the APP, they send me the APP and it literally is just the template that they just downloaded and haven't spent any time at fleshing out the APP. So it's very crucial that legwork is performed in making sure that you're meeting the requirements when it comes to tailored aspects. And just to kind of give you some additional resources as far as consultation is concerned, there are several groups that can assist with your company. Um, so first aspect of consultation, and I'll just outline some of the differences, is that we can come out and evaluate, and it has to be initiated by you. It's by employer invitation only. And we will come out and evaluate your written programs, what you have and don't have, and we can even come on site and look at how the employees are working and identify any potential hazards, things of that nature. We will look only for general and serious hazards. The thing about this is that at the end of the whole process, we'll send you a confidential report. It's different from compliance because the confidential report, there are no citations, there are no penalties. It's free because the workman's comp that's deducted from employees pays for this program. There are third-party companies out there. If you could go with them as well, except that they're going to charge you thousands of dollars to do it. We do it for free. And the confidential report explains the findings that we have, and we'll make recommendations as well to help you attain that voluntary compliance. The only aspect of the evaluation, if we were to do one for your company or for your site, is that if we find serious hazards, we have to make sure that we have those corrected and fixed. And for the most part, just being proactive with that is pretty simple. For example, if I come on site as a consultant and I see one of your employees isn't wearing a eye protection while they're using a nail gun, I'll address it with you right away. Say, look, that's a serious violation right there. Can you just make sure they put on some eye protection? And if not, at least have them stop using it until they're able to get it on. And that fixes it right away. If there's other hazards that require maybe a longer time to fix, we just make sure that you remove the exposure of that hazard to the employee, and then we'll just follow up having you send us a photo of it. And so that we want to make sure that even through our process, your employees are safe. We don't want to leave any serious violations that can cause injury, that can cause injury to your employees. But the main aspect is that it's confidential. Compliance doesn't have access to any of our reports. It is an established relationship between you and us, and we're trying to help you maintain and establish a safety program to keep your employees safe. There are other services we have, risk management. So basically, risk managers, management, they can give you help in controlling your claims and premium costs by providing information and tools to reduce those costs through claims management, HR practices, safety and accident preventions. These are things of that nature. So the premium costs, the claim is a result of if basically there's a basic initial factor that number starts with for your industry. And if your employees file a claim, that raises that number. And that it's a multiplication factor. So that number now is deducted from all of your employees' payments as part of that. So that basically means that it's taking money away from the profit aspect of the company. So risk management helps you to manage those claims and gives you a process in how to reduce those costs and things of that nature. Another service is industrial hygiene. Depending on the scope of what you do with your roofing, we're talking things such as hearing loss. You might be exposed to confined space, air quality, things of that nature. And then, of course, safety consultants, which is what I do. I deal more with dealing with immediate physical hazards that can cause injury. So when it comes to safety consultants and industrial hygiene consultants, it's all just a matter of asking for voluntary compliance from you. That's why we're out there. And back to what I do, I'll look at machine guarding, fall protection, PPE use, your written programs, things of that nature. So I know I've thrown a lot at you today. If you need some additional assistance with that aspect, feel free to reach out to me, and we can start an evaluation process for you and kind of get you rolling and to help you with setting up your accident prevention program. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Does each company need to have an APP in both English and Spanish?
It depends on the employees. The basic gist of it is that if you have, let's say, half the employees are English speaking and the other half are Spanish speaking, then you definitely want to have your APP translated to the Spanish aspect. You could have half employees that speak Farsi. You want to make sure it's translated to Farsi,
Okay.
and so on and so forth.
Okay. That's anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, thank you, B, for helping our CAW members review, prepare, and understand their accident prevention programs and the importance of having them tailored specific to each individual company. This PowerPoint will be emailed to each of you before the end of the week. That said, RCAW has our annual membership dinner with guest speakers Lobby Washington and Mr. Tom McCabe on October 24th at the Hotel Interurban starting at 5 p.m. with our networking event. We also have our final event of the year, RCAW's annual winter gala and auction, benefiting the Toys for Tots charity on December 7th at the Seattle Marriott in Bellevue starting again at 5 p.m. This year's theme is RCAW's Masquerade Ball. If you're interested in attending any of our events or having a Toys for Tots box at your office to fill with toys, please register online at www.rcaw.com or call our office at 253-561-7229. We hope to have you there and have a wonderful week. Again, thank you, Me, and we look forward to working with you again soon.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Me.